community. A group of populations of different species living close enough to interact. Interspecific interaction. A relationship between individuals of two or more species in a community. Interspecific competition. A interaction that occurs when individuals of different species compete for a resource that limits their growth and survival. Competitive exclusion. The concept that when populations of two similar species compete for the same limited resources, one population will use the resources more efficiently and have a reproductive advantage that will eventually lead to the elimination of the other population. Ecological niche. The sum of a species' use of the biotic and abiotic resources in its environment. Resource partitioning. The differentiation of niches that enables similar species to coexist in a community. Predation. A interaction between species in which one species kills and eats the other. Cryptic coloration. Camouflage such that a potential prey is difficult to spot against its background. Aposematic coloration. The bright colors of animals with effective physical or chemical defenses that acts as a warning to predators. Batesian mimicry. A palatable or harmless species mimics an unpalatable or harmful model. Mullerian mimicry. Two or more unpalatable species resemble each other. Herbivory. A interaction in which an organism eats parts of a plant or alga. Symbiosis. A relationship where individuals of two or more species live in direct and intimate contact with one another. Parasitism. A symbiotic interaction in which one organism derives its nourishment from another organism, which is harmed in the process. Parasite. An organism that feeds on the cell contents, tissues, or body fluids of another species while in or on the host organism, often harm but usually do not kill their host. Host. The larger participant in a symbiotic relationship, serving as home and food source for the smaller symbiont. Endoparasite. An organism that lives within its host. Ectoparasite. An organism that feeds on the external surface of a host. Mutualism. A. Symbiotic interaction that benefits both species. Commensalism. A. Zero symbiotic interaction between species that benefits one of the species but neither harms nor helps the other. Species diversity. The variety of different kinds of organisms that make up the community. Species richness. The number of different species in the community. Relative abundance. The proportion each species represents of all individuals in the community. Trophic structure. The different feeding relationships in an ecosystem, which determine the route of energy flow and the pattern of chemical cycling. Food chain. The pathway along which food energy is transferred from trophic level to trophic level, beginning with producers. Food web. The interconnected feeding relationships in an ecosystem. Energetic hypothesis. The concept that the length of a food chain is limited by the inefficiency of energy transfer along the chain. Biomass. The total amount of organic matter comprising a group of organisms in a particular habitat. Dynamic stability hypothesis. The idea that long food chains are less stable than short chains. Dominant species. A species with substantially higher abundance than other species in a community, exerting a powerful control over the occurrence and distribution of other species. Invasive species. A species, often introduced by humans, that takes hold outside its native range. Keystone species. A species that is not necessarily abundant in a community yet exerts strong control on community structure by the nature of its ecological role or niche.